She has big, searching eyes that see the good in people, despite the evil she has seen, and has a comforting kind of eternal beauty, her skin like the folds of a velvet shawl. I will never know what it means to be a black woman in the South. I will never know what it is like to be raised in the shadow of Jim Crow. I will never know how it feels to leave everything I've ever known behind, to free myself of the shackles of Southern law and hate. Ida Mae showed me there are different ways to grow without a father. Though my father was in my life as a child, he was not truly there because of his alcoholism and drug addiction. Ida Mae and I both experienced the absence of our father in different ways when we needed him in our adolescence. We both yearned for his presence and guidance through tough times at school. For both of us, he was not there when we needed him. Ida Mae helped me walk in the shoes of a strong woman. She protected her family and helped them stay strong when Joe Lee was accused of stealing turkeys and fled through her home. She was there for her family even as she watched while those men beat Joe Lee bloody with the same chains they had raised to her. She fled north with her husband amongst the millions of others of the Great Migration to a new land with her first child on the way. She passed through Chicago on her way to Milwaukee, and the sight of her first city stuck with her throughout her years. Although Milwaukee was her first destination, it would not become her home. And though she followed her sister's path from Chickasaw to Milwaukee, she soon found herself conflicted with wanting to return to Mississippi to give birth to her first child, but not wanting to leave her husband. She decided to return to Mississippi to have her child and return to her husband after giving birth up to Chicago, where he had moved to find better work, up to the city that she said had looked like heaven. Though she fled the South to escape the persecution and discrimination from white people, she continued to face this even up in Chicago. More surprisingly, she even had to face rejection from people who had also fled from the South but had come before her. Ida Mae's experience with stigmatization from her own race reminded me of my experiences as a biracial person. Both Ida Mae and I have encountered rejection from our own races for different reasons. Though the book does not focus on this part of Ida Mae's story, it resonated with me and helped me further my processing of my own experiences with intraracial discrimination. As Ida Mae heard Dr. Martin Luther King say in a speech in 1966, Chicago was not the New Jerusalem for those who had fled the Cotton Curtain of the South. Ida Mae and her family continued to experience exploitation and indifference in this new city. Life in Chicago was not easy, but the family strove through many adversities they faced. Ida Mae tried to never worry about things she couldn't change, and so made do with what they could get. A world away from Ida Mae lived a girl who faced adversity of her own. Annalise Marie Frank was born in Germany in 1929, the same year as Dr. Martin Luther King, and 8 years before Ida Mae Brandon Gladney. Both Ida Mae and Anne Frank fled their homes to escape persecution and discrimination. Both found their new homes not to be a place of sanctity. Although Ida Mae was able to make a new life in Chicago and fought through her hardships to live until the age of 64, Anne Frank had a different story. Though we were unable to tour the Museum of Anne Frank in Amsterdam, it was still surreal to see where her and her family had to hide from the Nazis during the war. Watching the people crowded around her home taking pictures, I wondered what this young girl would think if she could see how much she had touched people's lives. I remember reading her diary and learning about the Holocaust as a young girl myself. Our lives were so different, and I couldn't have even realized back then how privileged I was to grow up the way I did. None of us can even imagine to know what it was like to face what Anne Frank and the millions of other people faced during the Holocaust. On that day in Amsterdam, I thought of all of us and how lucky we were to be there, and how lucky we were to openly be who we are. In different capacities, our group would have all been at the mercy of the Nazis if we were in Anne Frank's shoes. "6 million Jewish people, 7 million Soviet civilians, 3 million prisoners of war, 1.8 million non-Jewish Polish citizens, 312,000 Serbian civilians, 250,000 people with disabilities from institutions, 220,000 Roma people, 1,900 Jehovah's Witnesses, 70,000 asocials, and thousands of homosexuals. We will never know all of their stories. We will never know who and what they loved or what they saw and thought. We are all privileged to know and read the story of a young girl who was one of the million of people murdered in Auschwitz." I'm not sure how to put into words what this trip meant to me. What I can say is that this experience gave me 9 great friends to share and remember this time with. We have all faced different obstacles throughout our lives, but through this, we arrived at where we are today. In our travels, we learned about each other and gained a deeper understanding of ourselves. It's not easy to open up to just anyone, but this experience allowed us to become a tight-knit group that can talk about our journeys. In our last meeting, we all shared stories about what we went through to get into our programs and come on this trip. I won't forget what it meant to me to know how we've all worked hard to get there. I am proud to have shared the warmth of other suns with all of you.